This time on Watchers of Tomorrow, the crew is tormented by the power of their own imagination.
Hello everyone, my name is Gep and I am joined as always by my friend Dr. Izix.
Hi.
And this is Watchers of Tomorrow, and this episode we are watching Star Trek Original Series Shore Leave.
Hooray, we get to take a break.
Yeah, rest and relaxation.
And lay about and not do anything a whole episode, right?
Yes, it's very boring, nothing happens. I think we can just skip it, it's fine.
Oh, okay. Next episode.
This episode was written by someone who won awards and things.
Oh, cool. Who was it?
Theodore Sturgeon.
Wait a moment, I know that name.
Was inducted into the Science Fiction Hall of Fame.
Excellent.
Which I didn't know was a thing until I was looking up who wrote this episode.
Because I've heard, Hugo Awards and things like that, but I was unaware that there was a legitimate Hall of Fame somewhere.
Yeah, I have no idea where it is. Maybe it's like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I hope there's a museum. That would be pretty cool.
We should go check it out someday. Do
Yes.
a video log or something like that. Sturgeon, isn't he the guy that coined Sturgeon's Law?
Yes. That was mentioned in the thing. I had trouble finding Sturgeon's Law, so if you happen to know it.
I think it basically boils down to that 90% of everything is crap.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like. I couldn't find, clarification. But yeah, something like 90% of science fiction is bad.
Well, everything. It was sort of the argument. It's like, yeah, 90% of science fiction is bad, but so is everything else. Which, that's very true. Wander around, TV and bookstores and pretty much any sort of media, YouTube itself, and you just kind of click on random stuff for a while. It's like, wow, this is just awful.
Yeah. We forget that the algorithms point us towards supposedly good things, so we don't even see 90% of stuff anymore.
Yeah, which, unfortunately, the algorithms, well, yes. Anyway.
We've got a few more guest stars than most episodes this time, because this is not a bottle episode. We aren't on the ship the whole time. Yeah, we've got new characters.
Mostly somewhere else.
Yes. We've got Emily Banks, who is now playing Yeoman Tanya Barrows, who apparently is the new hot yeoman that they need now that they've gotten rid of Yeoman Rand.
Yeah.
Just need to put in a new yeoman every episode, apparently.
Because I think she only has one appearance in Star Trek, ever. This one.
Yeah, I think so.
Which is, I guess, a little sad, because she seemed to have chemistry with at least McCoy. So,
That's a word for it.
Yeah, it's awkward, but they seem to be smiling at each other.
Perry Lopez plays Esteban Rodriguez.
Excellent.
And Barber Baldivan is Lieutenant Angela Martine. She and Rodriguez spend most of their time hanging out together. You kind of split the crew up into various party groups partway through this episode.
Yes. Never split the party unless it's Star Trek.
Bruce Mars plays the most annoying Irishman we've hit so far, named Finnegan.
Yes. Very, very, very annoying. I was thinking, it's like, I did a award for annoying Irish stereotypes. They're just completely what? I forgot the name before it, but I tried to include one here.
Okay. You can just make up a new one every episode. It's fine. No one's keeping track. Shirley Bone is playing someone called Ruth, who gets one line that just shows up and looks pretty most of the time. So I guess there's that.
Yes. So I'm going to stand here and be woo, mystical attraction, woo.
And finally, Oliver McCoy plays the caretaker.
A.K.A. Mr. Exposition.
Yep, the one who knows and wants to explain everything.
Okay, this is what's up, but we'll get to him later.
Yeah, he's not for a bit, but this actually, despite there being a lot going on, not much actually happens.
A lot of action, not much substance.
Yeah, so, it's probably not going to be as long of a recap as some.
Yeah, I did do some, fight scene back and forth a bit. It wasn't as good as the last time I did it, so,
Well, we can decide, because that's 30% of the episode. All right, before I go into the synopsis, there's one thing that I want everyone to just picture in your mind is wind chimes.
Yes, wind chimes.
There are wind chimes playing continuously throughout every scene on this planet.
So just if you got wind chimes, like go like hang out by them right now, and you'll get the same effect.
Yeah, and it's not like sometimes, like every now and then, or this low little mysterious wind chimey thing in the background that you can sort of hear. It's like overpowering wind chimes that like drowned out the music.
Yep.
Thankfully not completely the dialogue, but yeah, just imagine as like, so in The Naked Time we had this annoying song going through the whole background. It's like that, but wind chimes.
Which I guess is maybe less painful, but it still gets old.
Yeah, it does. It's not mysterious. It stops being cute really fast. The Enterprise is orbiting a planet that they're investigating to see if it is suitable to give the crew shore leave.
Yes. And we have to go down to a planet that we've never met before and has no one living on it, and because we can't go anywhere nice, apparently.
The captain is on the bridge getting a back massage from the new yeoman Tanya Barrows, who tells him that he needs to relax more.
Well, I guess it kind of makes sense. They have had quite a bit of adventures recently. On the previous episode, in fact, it's like, well, super tension and everyone could have died, so maybe they are really stressed out.
Yeah, they don't really talk about them doing anything recreational on this ship, so could kind of see that. On the planet, Sulu and McCoy are walking through a very generic-looking forest park.
Yeah, it's like something you might find in, like, I don't know, Southern California.
Yeah, it's oddly like that. Sulu informs us that there are no people or animals on this planet, just plants. The ecosystem that looks like it necessitates animal life.
Yeah, no, don't worry about that. It's fine. These plants obviously have some sort of different biology that we don't understand at all. Clearly.
McCoy says that this place is just like Alice in Wonderland, because a very generic, boring Southern Californian forest is exactly like Alice in Wonderland.
Yes, it's like light forest, but, Alice in Wonderland, you maybe imply like dense forest, like real lush stuff. This is just kind of pleasant as opposed to that.
Also, like, talking trees and giant chess pieces and mushrooms and where,
playing
like,
cards.
Alice in Wonderland is like full of nightmare fever dream stuff.
Yes.
What are you talking about? This is a forest.
Well, maybe McCoy realizes he's about to have a fever dream.
Yeah, he's just got that feeling.
I have a bad feeling about this. It's like that one time on that one planet. Oh no, it's happening again.
McCoy says that he really wants the captain to come down and rest because he is overstressed, but Sulu does not care and wanders off to start looking at plants.
Sulu's got more important business to do, man.
Botany. Sulu has the most character development of anyone on the show.
Yep.
Because we're introduced to him liking plants, and here he likes plants.
Yeah. It's like, I'm going to go study these plants. This is pretty cool.
If there's one thing we know about anyone on the ship, it's that Sulu really into plants.
And it's consistent between episodes. Hooray!
Oh my god, consistency. While Sulu is distracted by his plants, McCoy sees an anthropomorphic rabbit in a waistcoat who comments on being late and runs away into the woods.
Well, I guess that thing about there not being animal life here might be not true. Weird.
The rabbit is then shortly followed by a young girl in a blue dress who also then runs into the forest.
It's almost like he is in Alice in Wonderland. Oh no!
Oh my god, that's the thing he said. It is at this point that McCoy thinks to yell for Sulu.
I have to comment that when McCoy's seeing this, he's just like silent and stunned, and it's like shock. It's like this, what the hell's going on sort of face on him. And when the girl asks him if he's seen the rabbit, he just sort of points off to the side. It's like,
yeah, overall, this is actually a fairly funny scene.
Yep.
All things considered, it just is like, I understand. You just saw something weird and slightly shocking, so you don't know what to say. But you're a trained military officer?
Yep.
You should not be stunned into silence by the appearance of a large rabbit. Like, your first instinct should be to call for backup.
Like, Solo, we got some sort of weird alien here with a pocket watch and speaks English. Huh.
Yeah. Kirk has trouble remembering what day it is in his captain's log.
Dang it, Kirk, take a nap.
Yeah, I mean, this was good. At the first time I heard this, it was like, why is he having trouble remembering? But they've been talking about him being stressed the whole episode, so it makes sense.
Yes.
Spock enters his quarters and comments that he is not going to go to the planet for shore leave because to him, resting means literally conserving energy.
Mm-hmm.
And not running around using up all of your energy like humans do.
It's because Vulcans cannot have fun, ever.
McCoy calls the ship and tells Kirk that he is seeing giant rabbits, but Kirk dismisses this as a joke because no one on this crew takes anything seriously ever, and it's a problem.
Yep. And Kirk goes on, and it's just so dismissive and jokes about, like, did you see a little girl too? And McCoy's like, yeah. How'd you know?
Spock has come to the captain's quarters to comment that there is a crew member who's refusing shore leave, but is so stressed that he has affected his ability to carry out his duties and basic ship functions. And Kirk orders that this crew member should go take the shore leave, and Spock reveals that he was talking about the captain the whole time.
Surprise! Ha Spock manipulated the captain once again.
As Spock discusses how much fun the captain will have on the planet and how great it is and peaceful and how awesome it's going to be, we cut to the planet and see a rock lift up to reveal a revolver.
Well, this seems like a safe place to go. Just suddenly guns are showing up everywhere.
Randomly appearing for no reason. On the planet, a man and a woman we haven't seen before are looking at plants. The woman, who is Teller, complains to the man, Rodriguez, that they're spending too much time working. But he says that they need to finish the report before the captain beams down, and oh, look, here he is now.
He's beaming down like, right now, I don't got my stuff together.
And right next to us. Kirk and the yeoman Barrows beam down to find McCoy, who shows them the large footprints that Kirk confirms could be a rabbit. McCoy admits that he may be hallucinating these footprints that Kirk saw. So
that works somehow.
But he wants Kirk to check into it because, what if it's not hallucinating?
Yeah.
Kirk orders that the landed parties wait until they can tell if the planet is safe when they hear gunshots and start running towards them.
All right, so I will give them props. Kirk realized, okay, we need to actually check this place out. Maybe there's something to this. So he's actually being at least, kind of responsible there. So I'll give him props there.
Yeah,
Finally.
a little. I was wondering. So, I get that they heard a loud noise and ran towards it in this scene. But, how do any of them know what gunfire sounds like?
Yeah, that's a good question. I suppose that if they, if they're visiting planets that, are of sort of like the modern day, tech levels, they might run into such things. But that's not really something that's showcased very often in the show.
Yeah, not till next season.
Yeah.
The party arrives to find Sulu randomly shooting a revolver into nothing.
Yes, he's apparently target shooting at nothing.
At nothing. He says that he just found this neat gun. It's just like the one I was thinking about a minute ago while looking at plants.
Because apparently plants make him think about guns.
Yeah, for his collection. Which, fine, but why are you just wandering around this planet daydreaming about pistols?
People have associative memories. I don't know how his work.
This plant really reminds me of that time I had a gun.
Wasn't that cool?
Kirk takes the gun away from Sulu, and Barrows finds more rabbit tracks. They follow these tracks, and McCoy says he's starting to feel a little bit picked on because everyone's making fun of him for seeing rabbits. But Kirk uses this as an excuse to describe a man who bullied him with practical jokes when he was in the academy, including leaving buckets of water on half-open doors, that old classic, and leaving cold soup in your bed.
Okie
I mean, I know when I find soup in my bed, I expect it to be warm.
or at least, I don't know, room temperature, if it's been there for a while.
I know, because cold soup in the bed is just unacceptable.
It's like, I guess it's to just sort of you knock it over and you like freak out because it's cold or something like that. But wouldn't the same be the same? Like you just put ice in there?
Yeah. Why soup? Just if you want your bed cold, or short sheet the bed. Just there's lots of stuff you can do that does not involve soup.
Yeah. Maybe there's some future reason for it. Maybe.
They find the tracks of the girl McCoy saw earlier, and Kirk decides that he would rather follow the tracks of the young girl.
Kirk, what'd we say about this?
Yeah, this doesn't make me feel good about Kirk. He decides to head off alone, and as soon as he is alone, he sees a man leaning against a tree who he identifies as his school bully Finnegan.
Oh no, it's your arch rival from many years ago.
Finnegan mocks Kirk with this like horrible laughing Irish accent that he just says a thing and then laughs maniacally for 5 minutes, and it's just the worst. This is every part of this person being on screen is the worst part of the episode.
Yeah, so you also get the sort of stereotypical Irish music whistle thing going on, and he's like, come at me, bro, and all that fun stuff, and he's like, I'm going to be the most annoying guy for the rest of the episode.
Yeah, they have like Star Trek has a piece of like free stock music that sounds sort of Irishy that they use every time they have, vaguely Irish character. They do this even in Next Gen.
It's just like, really, guys?
They're just maybe it's not free. Maybe they paid a lot for that stock music and they just want to get their money out of it.
We're going to milk this one for the next 50 years.
Finnegan punches Kirk, sending him flying.
So a real practical joker by punching him.
Mm-hmm. And Kirk squares up to fight, but then he hears a scream and runs off, prompting Finnegan to mock him and laugh at his back as he runs away. It's this like horror movie sequence. Like this is the kind of film treatment you give a serial killer.
Yes. It's like, ah ha ha, I'm laughing while people are dying and screaming. Oh.
Kirk meets McCoy, and they both run to find Barrows, who was the one who was screaming. She is leaning against a tree with part of her clothing ripped off.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Kirk wasn't there, so who could have done this?
It's evil Kirk again.
Drat, he's back.
Barrows says she was following the rabbit tracks when she was suddenly attacked by a man in a cloak holding a jeweled dagger because she was thinking about how the forest should have a Don Juan in them.
Okay.
Kirk asks if she's sure she didn't imagine it.
Well, it wasn't Kirk who did the thing, but he's doing the other thing now.
Yeah, you have spent the entire time on this planet literally chasing a white rabbit.
Mm-hmm.
And you come across a woman who has been like, her shirt has been ripped partially off. And you're like, well, are you sure you didn't just imagine being assaulted?
Kirk, I want to kick you in the face now.
Mm-hmm. At least he got punched. At least we get to see him beat up a lot in this episode. I guess,
I don't think it's enough karma coming back at him, but at least it's a start.
It's something. But my God, this is like this is the only time. This is the only time in the entire episode that they even remotely question what is going on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, are you sure you were assaulted?
Some guys are just awful like this.
She says that Sulu ran off after the attacker, and Kirk leaves McCoy and Barrows to go off and look for him. As he leaves, a television aerial pops out of a rock and points at Kirk as he runs away.
Oh no, secret antenna attack.
Yes. For anyone who doesn't know, a TV aerial is that like metal web-looking thing that used to be on top of buildings back when we had broadcast television.
It's used to see them everywhere. Every household in America had their own antenna, their own aerial to get their, broadcast television of the local 3 channels or something like that. And there's before cable was a thing, really.
Kirk, who ostensibly has gone off to look for Sulu and this mysterious attacker, finds himself in rocks with a flower bush that he stops to, like, look at, and then just sees a woman standing there that he seems to recognize and asks if it is Ruth, and she confirms that she is in fact Ruth and then kisses him.
The lady with the triangle earrings.
Yeah, it's just, I'm off to figure out what's going on. Oh, look, a flower. Oh, look, a girl.
Well, that's awkward, but cool. I'm going to go with it. I'm going to roll with it. I'm going to assume I'm not imagining this. Hooray!
McCoy calls Kirk's communicator to ask if he has found Sulu, but Kirk is so dumbstruck by Ruth that he just goes like, I'm sure he's fine.
Everything's cool, man. Whatever.
So somehow, Kirk has become stoned.
A little bit. Just
This
subtly
is
by love, I guess.
Never explained. Yeah, just he's so obsessed with love or whatever for this woman. All the blood's gone from his head.
And it's probably a good thing we're focusing on the tops of these characters in this scene here, you know.
Yeah. Rodriguez calls to say that he saw birds.
I see birds. I see birds.
But that there shouldn't be any animals on this planet.
Well, there should be a lot of things you're seeing right now. So, what's your point?
Kirk just dreamily says, well, our scanners must have been wrong.
Rodriguez is like, could be that wrong, man. Come on.
Yeah, it's like our scanners can't be that broken, which apparently is enough to snap Kirk out of it.
Wait a moment. He's right. My ship is not that flawed. It can't be imperfect. Someone has to get to the bottom of this.
He then orders everyone to re-meet up in the forest. Spock calls Kirk to tell him that there's a strange energy reading coming from beneath the planet's surface and that it is interfering with their communications, which is why all the communications have been a little bit staticky and stuff.
Yes. And, calling around kind of seems to be cutting out occasionally.
We go to McCoy and Barrows, who are walking arm in arm as he talks about how amazing it is here, and she says that she feels like she should be dressed up as a fantasy princess.
Yeah, cool. She's into cosplay.
McCoy says that if she was, she would have to fight off even more attackers, including himself.
Dang it, McCoy.
She's really into this idea of McCoy fighting off McCoy, I guess.
I guess she really, really likes him, and so she's not, like, creeped out by it.
Yeah, it seems like they are flirting, but it's not. So this is weird, because, like, arguably this is a more consensually flirting relationship than we usually see on the show, but it's also written more awkwardly.
It's like, have you guys, like, never actually flirted with someone before? Come on.
Just then, she sees a dress hanging in a tree.
That's convenient.
And McCoy says that she should put it on. She agrees but says no peeking, to which he says that he's a doctor and he only peeks professionally.
Good?
Yeah, this is not... Don't use your medical license to say that you perv on people.
Yeah.
This isn't great. While she is changing, he is called by Rodriguez, and between creepily glancing over to see Barrows changing, he's told that the bad communicator connection and that Kirk has ordered them to all rendezvous back together in the forest. Mm-hmm. We cut to Rodriguez and Teller, who are being threatened by a tiger.
Who knows?
Rodriguez panics and keeps calling the doctor for help, but apparently they can't get through on the communicators, even though he has a phaser, like, right there. The hand that he's using to hold the communicator is, like, 2 inches above his phaser.
So how will you just switch about, guy? Come on.
Yeah, he's just like, help, there's nothing I can do. I don't have a gun that stuns things.
Yeah, I'm completely helpless. But maybe he's already tried it and it's out of batteries. I don't know.
Maybe, but they don't, I don't know. But the tiger gets bored and leaves.
Oh, that's convenient.
Yep, that was all. We now see Sulu wandering by a cliff. There's a hatch in the ground that opens up, and a samurai comes out of it and starts to attack him. Sulu tries to shoot the samurai because he's the one who remembers that he has weapons.
Hooray!
But the phaser does not work, and he runs away straight into Kirk.
Well, that's convenient.
He tries to explain that he's running from a killer samurai, but the samurai is now gone.
Where did he go? Why is the samurai not trying to chase them down?
Yeah, it's just gone.
Sulu that fast as he ran hundreds of miles away from the samurai to never be tracked by it?
Maybe. We don't know how fast Sulu is.
Well, Sulu is also, basically the best character so far, so he can do anything.
Spock then beams down from the ship, but the transporter is having trouble, which leads to it being twice as long of a transporter effect as normal.
Mm-hmm.
Kirk is upset because no one was supposed to beam down, but not very. And Spock explains that he had to because the communicators stopped working, and that the energy field thing is grown to the point that it's interfering with the transporters.
That's bad. So that means they're all stuck there forever, right?
Yes, they're all trapped here until we can figure out what's happening.
So it's good for Spock to be there too, I guess.
McCoy and Burroughs, who's now in her dress, have reached the rendezvous point, but no one else is there. Burroughs is nervous because she keeps hearing things, but McCoy says that she shouldn't worry because a brave knight is there to protect her.
Well, that's useful.
We, for some reason, pointlessly cut to the other crew members who hear a tiger and then do nothing about it, and then we cut back to McCoy.
And they see a knight.
Yes. A knight has appeared, and it's charging McCoy.
Yep.
Now, this is the point at which McCoy decides that none of this can actually be real.
So, obviously, it's a hallucination. We're having group hallucination that we're all saying exactly the same thing, and therefore it cannot harm us.
Yeah.
I'm going to stand here like a boss.
And he stands his ground. Now, this thing, I didn't know when to talk about this, but so if he believes that all this stuff is imaginary to the point that he's willing to risk being stabbed.
Yep.
He fully believes that Yeoman Burroughs is standing there naked.
Yep.
And that they are both imagining her to be wearing a dress.
Yep. So, McCoy, in his own particular world, is being very pervy and making use of Yeoman Burroughs' perception of the world to sort of, make that not so obvious.
Yeah.
So, Barrow, what do you see in the McCoy here? Come on.
Kirk, Spock, and Sulu arrive just in time to see McCoy get stabbed.
Well, I guess he got his comeuppance too.
Kirk grabs the gun from Sulu and shoots the knight.
Yeah, I guess it was a sort of a Chekhov's gun situation.
Yeah. Since their phasers don't work, he's got a pistol. But he's too late because McCoy is dead.
Oh no!
Now, I want to point out it's very unclear what happened in the episode. We have a shot of the knight riding towards McCoy. We have a shot of McCoy's face going, ugh, and that's it. And then they cut to commercial. So it's what's going on? And then later they all come back and he's laying there, and finally somebody gets around to saying that he is dead.
He's dead, Jim, but I'm not McCoy saying it. How does this work? Oh no!
Barrows is having a breakdown, and Kirk has to snap her out of it, after which, having been distracted, Sulu discovers that the knight was actually a mannequin.
That's weird.
Spock scans the knight's body and says that it is a mechanical contraption made of cellular tissues, similar to the ones that they have to repair wounds, but just much more sophisticated.
So basically, the knight is entirely made out of repair work.
It also seems that everything on the planet, including the plants, have been made of the same goop.
An artificial biosphere.
Just then, for some reason, an airplane flies over.
I guess we got transportation somewhere else on the planet now if they ever land.
We're now with Rodriguez and Teller, where he is saying that he was talking about weird flying machines they used to have on Earth, which I don't know if this scene was cut or what, but he's not mentioned these before in the episode.
Nope. Just suddenly it's remember that one time I was talking about this a few minutes ago?
She asks if the planes can hurt them, and he says no, unless they do a strafing run, which they then do.
Yep.
They do a strafing run, showering the ground with bullets. Teller is apparently hit and falls down. This is the last we see of Teller.
Yep.
After everyone was distracted by the airplanes, Sulu discovers that McCoy's body is gone, and so is the knight.
Oh no, they've been abducted by plant repair cells.
Spock says that he has a theory, and asks what Kirk was thinking of just before any of the people that he encountered. And Kirk says he was thinking of the Academy, but then is suddenly interrupted by Finnegan.
Oh no, not again.
Yes. Finnegan laughs manically at Kirk and runs off, prompting Kirk to chase after him.
In fact, Flanagan jumps over a particular rock, and then Kirk has to jump over that same rock as opposed to
awkwardly.
Going slightly around.
This is now an absurdly long chase sequence, followed by an absurdly long fight between Finnegan and Kirk. Halfway through, Finnegan knocks out Kirk. He takes a nap, wakes up, and they fight again for just as long.
Yep. It's like, what is going on here?
This is like a full 10 minutes of the episode.
Yep.
It's him running after Finnegan and then fighting Finnegan. No dialogue. Not a very well choreographed fight scene. So it is why any of this?
There is a few moments, a couple of these sort of pause points where Kirk's like demanding answers, like what's going on here, and Flanagan's like earn this and throws dirt in his face, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But the rest of it just like punches and rolling on the ground and chasing each other around and things like that.
Finally, Kirk knocks out Finnegan with a punch.
About dang time, man. Come on.
Spock has all of a sudden shown up.
Oh, hello, Spock.
Asks if Kirk enjoyed that. And Kirk says yes, and that beating up that guy was the only thing I've been thinking about for... Oh, now I get it.
Spock says he has a theory.
They both just agree that they must now control their thoughts. And they run off to warn the rest of the crew.
There is a little bit of action on the way to go and warn the rest of the crew. There's encounter with a tiger and return of the samurai, just sort of randomly.
Yeah, they just randomly see the tiger and then just tackle the samurai on the way through. Barrows changes back into her uniform, which is now somehow back and unripped and no explanation. So now she's just back in a normal uniform.
Well, maybe in the future your clothes repair automatically occasionally.
Yeah, you just have to leave it for a while. She is attacked by Don Juan.
Dang it.
But then Kirk shows up and Don Juan runs away. This concludes the pointless assault scenes.
Hooray! Let's not do that ever again, guys. Come on.
Yeah, good luck with that. Kirk tells them all to stop thinking and to hold still.
Step out for lip, everybody. Think about order and command lines and the being on the ship and attention, everybody.
Just after this, a gray-haired man appears, introduces himself as the caretaker of the planet, and said that he only just realized that the crew have no idea what's happening.
You're not a very good caretaker if you're watching these people and not understanding that they're completely confused by what's going on.
He explains that this planet was actually constructed by his people as entertainment. They have a factory underneath the planet that can make anything you think of as soon as you think of it.
Neat. It's like some sort of biological holodeck.
Spock likens it to an amusement park, which he explains is a place people used to go to do all sorts of fascinating things.
Cool.
That's all.
Like what?
Sulu expresses surprise that a race that technologically advanced would still need to play. Kirk says that the more complex the mind, the more they need the simplicity of play. They were so close to having a good point. Missed it at the last second. Just swerved away.
It's like, we're almost there.
Straight into the wall. The caretaker says nothing that happened here was permanent, and McCoy suddenly reappears with a woman wearing not very much fuzzy clothing on each arm.
It's he mentions, it's like, I was thinking about a cabaret on Rigel too.
But the other lieutenant who got shot, still nowhere to be seen.
Yep. Maybe she's like in the background somewhere, but I don't remember seeing her again.
Barrows does not care for McCoy suddenly having hot, barely dressed women on either side of him, and tells them to bugger off.
Yep. And the ladies go off to hang out by Spock.
Yeah. Kirk asks the caretaker who his people are, but the caretaker says that he's too stupid to understand.
They're beyond your knowledge, and because I don't want to give them a name.
Yeah. He then says that now that they know what's going on, it could be fun for the rest of the crew to come down and enjoy Fantasyland. Spock says he's going to return to the ship. Kirk is about to try and say, no, I'm going to go back to the ship, when he sees the character of Ruth suddenly appear. And he goes, oh, maybe I'll spend a day or two down here after all.
Yes. Hello, Ruth. Let's get busy.
Back on the ship, Kirk, McCoy, Sulu, and Burroughs have returned to the bridge looking all blissed out on life.
Yes, they are very, 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 very happy. Spock comments about how illogical it is.
Yes. They say that they had a good rest, and Spock says most illogical. The end.
Of course, when I saw that scene, it's like, I'm pretty sure all of them got laid on that planet.
Yeah. Just by what?
Who knows? Whatever they wanted.
Ugh. This episode just, I don't like it.
It's very much farce in the, in sort of stylings, and it's. I guess it's good in the, sense that we kind of needed an easy episode for the audience after the more tense one that came previously. But
well, see, I get that they're doing some farcical stuff. They have a couple of kind of funny moments with some of the characters, but the characters aren't maintained well enough for it to be like a break from character that we find amusing.
Yeah.
We don't know who any of these characters are because they haven't been established and they don't stay consistent episode to episode.
So, the characters are kind of a mess. I guess there was, there's Sulu, of course, is, plant love. But there's also, I guess, Kirk being sort of Mr. Captain, because at several points he's like, sort of chin up, focus and, think about your duty sort of stuff here, sort of doing that. But that's sort of also the general trope of this person is the guy in charge of a vessel of some sort. So he gets to do that.
Yeah, and in between his, chin up, do your duty, whatever things, he's just randomly incapacitated by a pretty girl and being beat up by an old school bully.
Shrug. So you got the trope for your position, but not much more.
Also, both women who are on the planet get one gets killed and one gets assaulted, so I guess that's their fantasies. While all the men just have random pretty women appearing around them.
I guess Spock doesn't. I don't think Sulu does.
Yeah, Sulu gets a samurai.
Yes, a samurai and a gun. Not sure what that
Sulu's
means.
violent.
Sulu, despite all his plant love, is just wants to hurt people, apparently.
See, this is the thing. This would have been a really great way to build characters.
Mm-hmm.
Because you could have had these fantasy things, and what does each of them consider to be their fantasy, and how does it go wrong? Yeah. But instead, it's just a bunch of random junk that you can't link to any character because they haven't spent any time building the characters.
Yeah, and it's like, well, I just suddenly randomly thought this, and so now it's real, and I have to deal with it.
Yeah,
Hooray.
The only thing that you can really get is that McCoy is a lecherous perv.
Yep.
And we kind of knew that already because it's how every person on this ship is presented.
Pretty much, yeah. So that's not really character, that's more just the trope of the series here. So I guess maybe we should contrast that a little bit to Next Generation holodeck stuff, which actually, for better or worse, even with some of the extreme silliness, does make better use of this notion of being able to sort of build up a fantasy world that can help you build the characters. Like Picard and his Dixon Hill stuff, and Riker and the trombone and the performance in the nightclub stuff, and Data and the Sherlock Holmes adventures. All that fun stuff. See,
I feel like that we hit a thing here, and I'm kind of sorry to say it because I do like some of the people who were in this show, excluding Shatner.
Mm-hmm.
I legitimately like and am a fan of pretty much everyone else who was a main character in this series. But the main actors on Next Generation are better performers than anyone on original series.
Yeah.
They have a better range. They're more nuanced actors. They give better performances. So the holodeck stuff, they have several holodeck episodes, and all of the best holodeck episodes either feature Captain Picard or Data.
Yep.
And you have that because both of them are played by amazing actors.
Mhm.
Patrick Stewart and Brent Spiner are amazing actors with incredible range. So getting to see them play remarkably different characters from who they are on the rest of the show, which remains consistent for the rest of the show, is really interesting and character building.
Like suddenly, okay, flip the switch, and suddenly I'm Sherlock Holmes, and I'm giving pronouncements and going through these steps by steps, and being very enthusiastic about it. And it's like, oh, now I'm back to date. I'm more mild mannered and calm, and speaking a very sort of monotone voice most of the time.
Yeah. So you could have this, like, let's just say Kirk beamed down to this planet and suddenly took on the persona of Sherlock Holmes. Would we reasonably be able to say that we know that is out of character for Kirk?
Not really. I guess I'm having trouble sort of putting together that he'd be able to pull it off at all. he'd be sort of like confused, but
yeah, one, the actor couldn't do it, and we don't know enough about the character to know whether this would be an out of character thing for him, or is he a fan of this? Like the Sherlock Holmes stuff for Data in Next Gen gets set up like 6 episodes before.
Yeah.
They mention Sherlock Holmes, and he starts like being Sherlock Holmes in a different episode to solve a mystery. And then later they do the stuff on the holodeck. It's an interest that they have established him having previously.
They sort of build on it as they go along.
And I realize some of this is just they changed the way that they filmed television between when this show was made in the 60s and when Next Gen was being made in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
Because they did not show episodes in any order.
Yeah, just sort of toss them out.
So you can't have character building in between episodes because you don't know what order the episodes are going to appear in.
Like, you just kind of have to have a general sense of the character and just hope everyone kind of gets it as things happen, and which generally leads to the characters being kind of bland and flat and heavily reliant on tropes and cliches as opposed to actually being people.
Yeah, so there's some major limitations going into this show that keep it from being able to really do anything.
We've run into a dilemma here that unfortunately we're not going to be able to solve with the original series because, well, it's all in that era.
Yeah, I think they do slightly better with it in season 2 through 3, but season 1 seems to be a hot mess.
It's like, we're just going to shotgun stuff and see what works, kind of.
Now, before we get into some anything that's more relevant to the episode, I wanted to take a quick moment to use this as an excuse to talk about hallucinations.
Go for it.
Because just by happenstance, I had just finished a book on hallucinations a couple weeks before we watched this.
Oh, what was this book?
It was called Hallucinations.
Oh, that's very descriptive.
By Oliver Sacks, who people I think know his more well-known book, The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat.
I'm afraid I don't know that one either. All right, I'm ignorant on this, so go ahead.
He's like studies neuroscience and is kind of like a go-to person that people call in when something weird happens.
Yeah.
So he writes these books that are basically a bunch of anecdotes, like anecdote case study sort of things of various people that he's encountered throughout his career because people know he's the guy to call in when something weird and unexplainable is happening with someone's brain. And he goes through a bunch of different cases of hallucinations and types of hallucinations. And it's really interesting because, one, hallucinations are way more common than we think of them as being. Like, basically every person will experience several of these throughout their lifetime.
Things that seem quite real or even potentially unreal, but you experienced it.
Well, see, this is the thing. It ranges from you thought you saw something out of the corner of your eye, but you didn't, to full on you walk into your bedroom and there's a party happening.
Well, this is strange. I'm going to leave here and come back and see if it's still there.
Well, that's part of it too, is like, that's never really necessary. Some people with very, very, I guess what you would call severe hallucinations, so that has some kind of negative context that don't really apply. I guess maybe vivid would be a better term.
Yeah.
They can see and smell and touch these hallucinations. They seem very physically real in some cases.
Yes.
But they are never tricked by them.
Mm-hmm.
You always have a knowledge that what you are seeing and interacting with is not really there. If you're in the state of mind to be able to question it at all, you have a realization that this is not really happening. So this idea that you can just kind of randomly be tricked by a hallucination doesn't really go with any of the recorded evidence of hallucinations.
Yeah, it's sort of, I guess, in some ways, like if you realize you're dreaming, then you sort of realize, oh, this is a dream. But I'm still going to have a lot of fun. But I'm not going to be, persisting in the realization here. It's not quite the same, but sort of like if you are, able to perceive it with your conscious mind, you're like, oh, this is obviously what's going on in that sort of half sleep sort of phase.
Yeah,
this is sort of just pushing it to the being fully awake sort of side of things.
I'm actually just reminded of a friend of mine just had a thing on Twitter where she said she has been having trouble sleeping, and she said the other night to Queen Victoria, "I know you're not real because we don't normally hang out."
Well, that is true. She's been dead for a number of years. That makes it difficult to hang out.
So you have that kind of thing with hallucinations, and I think it's just really interesting. People should look into the history of hallucinations more, because I feel like that's something that we are very scared of as a culture. We have this idea that hallucinating is somehow means something is wrong with you, but it's actually incredibly common.
It's something that most folks don't quite put two and two together. It's like, oh, that was the same kind of hallucinations that all the people that I think are crazy or something like that experience. I'm just going to discount it and pretend it didn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the way it's been described and theorized as sort of a malfunction, or not really a malfunction, but the predictive part of your brain kind of over predicts.
This is what should be happening here, and this is what's going to be doing. I guess for myself, I've had super deja vu a number of times, and it just really weirds me out for the entire day. So it's sort of, I guess, sort of borderline on that sort of stuff too.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we have no idea what deja vu even is.
Yeah.
But this can range from even I've had this, and I didn't actually think of it as a hallucination until I was reading this book. But when you see something that is strongly associated with a memory to you, and you can kind of smell whatever was happening at the time of that memory.
Ah, yes.
That's a nasal hallucination.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing there for you to smell. So the smell is a hallucination.
But the brain's like, oh yeah, this is the exact same situation. Who cares what the nose is actually telling us? We're going to fire those neurons that cause the smell in your brain.
Yeah, and it's that kind of thing. The way that your vision and hearing and senses work is very predictive.
Mm-hmm.
You get this pattern input, and it's kind of run through a prediction in your head. It goes it's most likely that this set of patterns equates to this thing.
Yes.
So this is just that happening, but without the thing actually being there. I mean, it's very similar to if you wake up at night and you look over and you see your shirt draped across a chair, and you look at it, it's there's a person standing there, and I know there's a person standing there, and you blink a couple times, it's oh, now I see it, it's a shirt.
Oh, yes. Just happens to be in sort of the general same form as a person. The shirt, arms down the sides, sort of propped up. Yeah, it makes sense that my brain would have said it was a person, but it's not.
Yeah. Also, full group hallucinations probably don't happen.
Yeah.
You might have a little bit of suggestibility where several people might especially when you're kind of doing a collective drug thing. If a lot of people are taking hallucinogens, you can have a certain amount of suggestibility into what you might see, but not everyone's going to be having exactly the same experience.
Exactly. It's sort of okay, everyone's now on the LSD here, and someone says, I'm seeing the purple, and then everyone's starts thinking about oh, purple, and then they start seeing the purple too because it's been suggested to them.
Yeah, there's also a lot of evidence that if whatever you go into the experience expecting to see, you're probably going to see.
I've run into folks one time I had a bad trip, and I'm well, what do you think caused it? It's like, well, just the drugs, man. I'm like, I mean, what else do you think caused it?
Yeah, there's a lot of kind of evidence in this sort of thing with like bad trips are sort of you're trying to fight what's happening.
Yeah. Until
So
it stressed you out, and things just get worse from there because your brain's like, now I'm in flight mode, and so I need to be suddenly much more aware about threats, and they could be anywhere, like even right over there. Oh God.
yeah, well the thing is like we kind of have some theories of how these things work psychologically, but the like hallucinogenic drugs kind of break down kind of the pieces that exist between the various parts of your system. So parts of your system that normally would have a little bit of trouble interacting can now interact.
Yeah. Suddenly everything is sort of plugged into itself backwards.
Yeah. But so if you see something that you don't want in there and you tell it to like go away mentally, you're like, I don't want that monster thing here right now. You've now put two parts of yourself that normally aren't interacting into conflict.
Yep.
And that's not good.
Things start going a little bad.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty complicated. It's also not fully understood either in the neuroscience way, and it hasn't really been studied in a psychological way since it's, a class whatever drug that you're not allowed to do research on.
Yes.
So we're starting to get a little more coming out because it's becoming popularized for psychology again. But overall, we don't know as much about it as some other things.
It's effectively a means to set the brain into a different, I guess, mode. Like you got your standard mode, you got your safe mode, you got your sleep mode, and now you got your drug mode here. And so you can sort of study how the connections and behaviors work. And so, it can be potentially quite useful for that. Just as long as you know what you're doing with it.
But see, so these plot lines, which is pretty common, is less a how do we know what reality is based on like our brain can see things that we don't know if are real. It's they want to be doing something like that, but it's coming out of this inherent fear that we have of being psychologically abnormal and having hallucinations. Just the idea that hallucinations are some sort of thing that you should fear and that could trick you is like, it's just playing from this, if I have this and I am crazy, that is something to fear and be disgusted by, and other people are going to fear me for it.
The idea is that like, okay, I'm no longer in control of myself, and so I'm going to be hurting myself and those around me. And because I'm now be perceived as that sort of threat, everyone's going to try to hurt me in response. And so it's sort of feedback loop of fear.
Yeah, you do have a psychological state where you become disconnected from reality. But it's not hallucination, it's psychosis.
Yes.
Now, one may involve the other, but you aren't acting coherently when you are having a psychotic break. It's one of the hallmarks. Like, anyone around you is like, things are wrong, you're not acting normally. You don't have this, like, everything's fine, except I'm not sure if that thing standing over there is real.
Now, it's, with the break there, it's more of a, my behavior has changed at the fundamental level. So it doesn't really matter what I'm seeing. I'm going to be reacting to it in a different fashion.
So these plot lines bug me a little.
Oh,
now, I know that we're not dealing with hallucinations in this episode, but they spend a decent amount of time on we don't know if these things are real or not.
Indeed. So it's sort of like, well, we're going to sort of joke about it. It's like, clearly this isn't real, so I'm going to stand here and get myself stabbed, because that's the only way to prove that I'm not, out of my head here. Yeah.
Yeah. Also notice that the way he wants to prove that things are not real is by manling up and like not giving in to fear. Because there were plenty of times earlier where they could have tried to determine whether these things were hallucinations or not by like objective evidence and other things, just not the only way to prove that you know what reality really is to not give in to your fear.
Yeah, you got an inanimate object here. You got the dress. You could just scan it as opposed to like having her put it on. Come on, guy.
Yeah, you could do all kinds of stuff with the dress. You could have done something with the gun. You could have done more or less anything with this.
Yeah. Like, in fact, when I was watching the episode, like, okay, you got a gun, you should probably like scan it. And they just kind of don't. Well, I guess there was just sort of randomly a gun here from Earth for some reason.
They forget that they even have scanners until the knight shows up, and they're like, this guy doesn't look real.
Yep. Oh, we should probably like scrutinize our environment somewhat. So, any more you want to talk on this, or should we move on to the next thing?
We can move on. This was like a very long aside about hallucinations.
Yeah. Don't worry, I got an aside as well. You want to talk about hedonism?
Sure.
So first off, how much do you know about hedonism?
I know some of the very basics that like ties into the hedonistic ideas, but
so I guess the old school, like classical Aristippus of Sarina sort of view of it is that all knowledge can only be a product of immediate sensation. So what you actually are sort of running into in the world. And things like objective knowledge, it doesn't really make sense for him. So it's like, and things like higher pleasures like thinking and being all enlightened and full of self-confidence or whatever, that's not cool. You got to lean on the simple, intense, sensations preferentially to really know the world. And because of all this, then, pleasure is kind of the highest form of morality, then, seeking pleasure, obtaining it, and enjoying it. So that's sort of the classical view of it. Of course, it's sort of evolved since then. There's also various religions sort of takes on it, but you get to the utilitarianism era where they're all like, it's like, well, we got to maximize it, pleasures for the entire society, and sort of the moral consequentialism of that. That the sort of the ends justify the means, that if we're doing something that makes more pleasure for more people, then that's cool, right? Of course, there's also some variants of that, like quantitative and qualitative versions, which is like, okay, do you want just more pleasure or do you want higher quality pleasure? Then you get to more, some other sort of branches like the libertine mode, which I guess is very fitting with the Don Juan there, which is sort of also, generally described as a libertine sort of character. If you're unfamiliar with Don Juan as a character, basically he tries to sleep with everybody, like absolutely everybody. Doesn't matter what they look like. Doesn't matter if they're old or young, if they're married or not. He wants to get with them. That's like his MO there. And the libertine sort of view on the hedonism is that just go for everything and try to acquire it as much as you like, and morality that prevents that is actually harmful and unnecessary. So go get your end away there. So that's sort of the more back in history sort of views on it. There's also the more recent ones like transhumanism. They're all like, well, maybe we can't end suffering and promote pleasure in the world by like fixing society. Maybe we need to change ourselves. So maybe if we do taxes, make that a pleasurable experience. Oh, we need to dig a giant ditch. Well, we're going to change our biochemistry so that we can just gain so much satisfaction from that we just sort of do it. And so it's still sort of that pleasure is the ultimate sort of, enlightenment, but sort of changing what's the definition of pleasure in order to more, easily achieve it. And so in the long run, we could, be maximizing our pleasure by changing ourselves as opposed to the world. And why I want to talk about this a little bit here was because, talking about the sufficiently advanced aliens, who are running this place, they're like, they're got this planet. I guess they got to enjoy their pleasure too, man. Well, in some ways, I guess they are kind of hedonistic in some fashion, but they also seem to be, kind of, skipping over that transhumanism sort of a take on it. So I guess they've decided, we're not going to go that route. We're just going to have a pleasure planet instead.
It's kind of an interesting one. I wasn't as familiar with hedonism, but it really ties into something that I was thinking about with this episode, which was the comparison between this new set of aliens who's developed this technological pleasure planet with the Telosians that we had in Menagerie.
Yes.
Who are suggested to have an amoral pleasure system based on illusion and imagination.
Yes.
Which, as you were saying, in the hedonism, thinking about stuff cannot be as tactile and good as like having a thing physically there.
The Cerinthian there, Serini. I'm not sure how to pronounce it properly. Sort of school of thought. It's like, okay, only the real stuff is really what you can care about. Anything else, it's made up. You know, it's unimportant, and it's not something you can be so totally sure is actually a thing. So it's obviously there to deceive you, I guess.
Yeah, so I was tying it in my mind, into a kind of capitalist mindset that this show goes on, of being able to just find contentment within yourself through the daydreaming that they kind of imply the Telosians are doing, is going to be the downfall of a society. Whereas this is all mechanically generated, which, if during the like throes of this, after World War II sort of assembly line expansionism that we have in the 60s, this is like implied to be, as long as you are manufacturing it, as long as it is some sort of kind of manufactured, mass-produced consumer good, then something it's concrete, amazing and fine.
But the alternative take that it's all in your head, well, that's unacceptable. That's building something that is not, you can't physically put your hands on. That's not good enough. Doesn't matter how much you can enjoy it and how good it may seem. It's all a lie, and you'll be trapped in that forever, man.
Yeah, don't find pleasure within your own internal experience. You have to seek external physical objects to bring you pleasure.
Which is a very hedonistic sort of mode, but it's also, as I said, very sort of capitalist. Yeah, you need to have things in order to be happy.
Yeah, it's a very consumerist take on things, of this physical object is going to make me happy. Also, let's keep in mind that at least 3 of the physical objects which they are using are shaped as human women.
Yep. And all the guys that show up, unless you count the rabbit, I guess, are like aggressive and cruel in some fashion.
Well, Finnegan exists for Kirk to beat up.
Yes.
That is his purpose. You would imagine similarly the samurai exists for that purpose, and so does the knight. The 3 male characters that show up as part of this thing exist purely for the men on the planet to display dominance against.
Yes. There's also Don Juan there, but he's more like run him off sort of thing.
Well, you see, that is implied to be the fantasy of Yeoman Barrows.
True. Yes.
So the only man that appears that is imagined by a woman is a rapey protagonist of a story that tries to physically assault her, which it implies some very nasty things about women's fantasies involving men and sex.
Yeah, and it's not healthy.
Where the male fantasies involving sex, just having a random docile woman appear that you can do whatever you want to, that's not only good, but it is like so enticing that it renders them incapable of doing anything else.
I will, I want to say real quick that, people, in general have lots of different fantasies, and some of them very much fall sort of down in these particular avenues of interest. But it seems to be, implying in this episode and, in the original series so far in general, that these are the only way things are. And that's very, very kind of disturbing to me.
Yeah, well, you have to draw a distinction, especially in critical theory, between like people's individual fantasies and the generalized fantasies that the writers of this media are implying we should identify with.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a distinct difference. Someone who has this fantasy of, a docile woman or whatever, like they have their own individual reasons for that. And part of them are possibly informed by the fact that it was considered a culturally acceptable fantasy that was shown to them through these mediums.
Like, oh, this is the fantasy that I'm supposed to have, so I'm just going to sort of ignore my instincts and whatever on my own personal experiences and just sort of try to mimic this what I'm seeing in the media sort of thing.
Yeah, you get your good old Ouroboros of media. You have culture influences media, which influences culture.
And so if you sort of try to, in some cases, if you try to get outside of this sort of circle, you even get to like ostracized. Like, well, why are you interested in that? That doesn't make any sense, man. Come on.
Yeah, like being outside of this norm, like even insofar as I'm trying to remember if we've had an example in this show yet, but there's some things from around this time period or a little bit after where it's like, oh, you want to be with a woman who is not docile. That's kind of kinky.
The aggressive, the seductress sort of thing. This woman has self motivation and personality, and therefore is quote dangerous in the sort of mode of the day, and thus you are a risk taker yourself by sort of pursuing someone of that sort of personality.
Yeah,
so that's like kinky and stuff.
So I think like this, it's a weird one with this because the you could have used the fantasy stuff to inform the characters, but instead we just get the fantasy stuff as sort of a view of how the writers thought of appropriate fantasies of the time, which were like they were either violent or they were sexual.
Yes.
Those are the only two things that we see.
Yeah, I would have loved to like have one of the characters have a fantasy. Like, oh, this is someone I met years ago, and we played a game of chess, and they beat me soundly. I'm going to play chess with them again, and that'd be kind of cool. It's like, oh, we got someone who isn't all about the sex and violence.
Well, you even have something like in the beginning, Sulu goes off and is like, oh my God, alien plants, I'm going to go have a field day.
Yeah.
And instead of him like encountering a rare or extinct species of plant that he would find really, really interesting to study or encounter, he finds a gun.
Yes. So in opposed to that thing he was mostly thinking about, that one stray thought that's like, oh yeah, remember that time that I had a gun collection or something like that?
Yeah, and some of the stuff isn't even like you're supposed to think that they are wandering around daydreaming this stuff. Like, oh, I'm walking through the forest. It reminds me of Fantasy Kingdom. I associate Fantasy Kingdom with poofy dresses. Oh, there's a poofy dress. But you get all this random stuff like the tiger and the samurai and the World War II fighter planes.
It's like, okay, just a stray thought can sort of do this as opposed to any sort of focus, actual desire.
And geese.
Yeah, geese.
Why
would you want
were
geese?
You randomly thinking about a flock of geese?
Should have been thinking about a flock of seagulls instead.
Also, the way of this planet, I guess if you go down to this planet, knowing what it is, you're expected to like concentrate on your fantasy thoughts. Yeah. But the way this seems to work is any stray thought that enters your head has sort of an equal random chance of being made into reality.
Yeah, so it's the user interface on the system is really, really kind of crap.
Well, there's no way that these are the only random things they're thinking of. Your brain is usually making random junk connections all the time.
Yeah.
But like why these specific ones were pointed out by whoever's running this thing to be their fantasies that they would like is unexplained.
Yeah, maybe there's something about like the alien psychology there, the caretakers people thinking like a very radically different way. There are some analogs to a human consciousness, but there's sort of enough differences like, okay, this is what works for us as far as controlling the command line here. Like, oh, wait, it's not actually working properly for the humans. Whoops.
Yeah, possibly, but it just, I don't know. It's never explained adequately enough for us to gain a like expectation of what could be coming next, which is always a little bit of the fun when they do these episodes correctly.
Yeah.
Like they've done things like this in other media, and I kept thinking about it. So like it was a pretty big hallmark in the kind of late 90s, early 2000s sci-fi, like around the kind of Farscape and Stargate eras.
Mm-hmm.
That you would have a not completely dour, but somewhat serious show that ran a more or less serious plot line through a decent amount of it. And then every now and then you would hit the weird episode, where you would have fun seeing the characters do something weird and different.
I'm having flashbacks to the one episode of Stargate SG-1 where they're like, working with the one guy who's like an alien who works on a TV show that's basically part of the cover for the Stargate program, like a plausible deniability thing. And they're like, well, we're like trying to, figure out, think it was like a movie or something like that for the show. The show within the show, that is. And they're like all tossing out ideas, and some of them are like, it's like, yeah, that's actually just Star Trek, or it's like, okay, they're all puppets instead. And it's basically just a round table of them throwing out the ideas and going through kind of crazy plots with them.
Yeah, did.
It's glorious.
They did an episode that I think was their like 200th episode special.
Yeah.
And they did an episode that was a sketch show of them parodying other sci-fi properties.
Yep.
And it was hilarious, but it only worked because at that point you had 9 seasons of this show being more or less serious with a consistent plot line and consistent characters that you knew.
Yes, it's like, well, we know how they behave, how they react, and we can now sort of, turn the tables or put lampshades on, or sort of, throw things in this general direction to see what happens.
Though that kind of postmodern interpretation of television didn't really become possible until after the invention of the internet. Because so many of those referential jokes, like the fact that at that point 2 of the actors had come over from Farscape was used as a joke in the show, and that wouldn't necessarily be something you could expect your audience to be completely familiar with at this point in the 60s.
It was a bit beyond folks of the time.
Well, postmodernism kind of encompasses an idea that everyone has access to a lot of information all of the time, so things can be referential. Because if you make a it's in this episode they make a reference to Alice in Wonderland and Don Juan, both of which are old books that you can expect your audience to be familiar with. If they'd made a reference to something that was more contemporary, you couldn't necessarily expect that everyone in your audience had seen it.
Yeah, you got to reference the well-established culture as opposed to, I don't know, Gunsmoke or something like that.
Yeah, they also don't really do any deep cut references. It's Alice in Wonderland, here's a rabbit and the girl. There's no Cheshire Cat, there's no chess references, there's nothing that gets into the actual plot of Alice in Wonderland. It's just, here's 2 things that most people would be able to recognize as a reference to Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah, it's very light. There's not even a single off with our head sort of situation here.
Yeah, there's there's no deeper stuff. We're kind of inventing postmodernism at this point. It's not postmodern yet.
Yeah. It's
still modern, in fact.
Still very modern. Well, I think I got most of the stuff I want to talk about for this one.
I had one more quick thing.
Go for it.
Which was that line at the end that bothered me so much, where Kirk says that a complex mind needs the simplicity of play.
Oh yeah, I was going to sort of touch on that with the hedonism. That's actually sort of one of the things that kind of goes back and forth in the various philosophies there. One of the peoples, I think Mills, I think it was, who was talking about that. It's like, that's complete bunk. that to a degree, it's important to have pleasure, as part of your sort of philosophical foundation here, or whatever. But because human beings are nominally more complex than say the barnyard animals, and have more stuff to do outside of pleasure, that they inherently need a higher quality pleasure, a more I guess sort of intense version of it, as opposed to the others, the other school of thought, the quantitative utilitarians, were all about, it's like, just get more and more pleasure. It doesn't really matter what kind it is, just more of it. Which these aliens seem to be much more of the quantity as opposed to quality.
Yeah, Also, like, this kind of speaks to they hate kids in
Oh
the
yeah.
60s. They really hate children. And this is kind of like play is a simple activity
Hmm.
that, just is like maybe a relaxation from the complex things that you as an adult have to do. But as we've moved on, we've kind of developed more and more behavioral theories on play as kind of a learning tool.
Hmm.
Because, like, children and basically all animals, basically all young animals of a certain mental complexity, I don't think it's really been observed among something like insects, but like birds and mammals generally, like young members of the species engage in play behavior
Hmm.
that in some way mimics what they will have to do as an adult.
Yeah. The scampering and play fighting and things like that.
Yeah, there's like a species of hawk that plays by throwing sticks to each other in midair that has been theorized as like a behavior that helps them hone in their hunting abilities. And, humans have very complex play because we engage in a very complex social interaction as adults, which
Yeah.
needs to be practiced as children. And even through adulthood, one of the reasons that we engage in play behavior throughout our entire lives is because we are constantly learning and practicing new behaviors.
Hmm.
So I always think of it this way. You have this odd thing of like things that are enjoyable are somehow wrong in a certain way in our culture. We think that enjoying yourself is wrong and you should be doing things that you don't enjoy, like work. But, pleasure and joy and entertainment and things, this is the way that your instincts use to push you towards things that are necessary.
Hmm.
Like you like to eat because you need to eat. You like to play because you need to play.
So I guess it sort of touches back on that transhumanism things that the idea is that we don't yet get sufficient pleasure from the things we need to do, and so we'd be changing our behavior in the future, our physical bodies in some fashion, and our thought processes in order to gain more pleasure from the things we don't want to do,
Yeah,
but need to.
which is
And
such a it's such a like modern take on these things.
yeah, it's
It's
like
this like society exists as some sort of like unchangeable just object in the world that we cannot have an effect on. Therefore, we need to change ourselves to fit better into a society. Instead of like the reason everyone hates what they do in society is because the society is not structured in a way that is optimal for people.
well, you don't just give up that quest for a post-scarcity society here, guys. It's us who are to blame, and so you need to suffer more in order to pretend you don't suffer later.
Yeah, I mean, like society structures itself. It obviously structures itself in ways that function for the group, but we need to like look into like are these things we really need to be doing? Like, do people really need to be digging this ditch that we don't enjoy doing? Can we have a better system
Can we get
instead
a
of
machine to do it?
genetically altering someone who enjoys digging ditches?
Yeah. Because you start going down that road, and suddenly it's like, well, we effectively created a zoned out slave class to do all the hard labor here, while the people that didn't get themselves modified get to enjoy all the fruits of it.
Well, you hit Brave New World,
Yep.
which oh my god, I hate that book, but yeah. Which I guess if anyone isn't familiar, they clone everyone, and then you are just kind of arbitrarily assigned a social class, and then behaviorally trained to only enjoy things that you will do within that social class as a child. So like someone who is going to be a janitor is trained from birth to enjoy being around mops and given like electric shocks anytime they move off to do something that is not cleaning.
Sorry, I have to do this real quick. I want a mop. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, I'm done. Yes. So that's sort of a nightmarish world there, where people are sort of their internal self-derived wants are sort of pulled out by the world around them, and they are forced into the appropriate shaped peg holes, I guess, depending on what the world, the society they live in desires of them, as opposed to, I don't know, just making society better.
Yeah, I mean, this it's like definitely a like transhumanist book.
Mm-hmm.
Like we have changed people. There's this quote from it's from one of the Discworld books, which I just love as a series. But there's a quote that's like it's basically boils down to there's two kinds of people who can be in charge of people and try to structure society. And one of them says, this is how people are, how do we deal with them? And the other says, this is how people should be, how do I make them this way?
Sort of a, both of them are difficult tasks. Let's put that up there front. But one of them is more putting the onus on others as opposed to your own responsibilities there. Because if you're in charge of the entire society and you have the power to change the society and you opt to not change the society, that kind of makes you a dick.
Mm-hmm. Now, see, Star Trek, pay attention. This is what happens when you don't give us any actual themes in your episode. We wander off and start complaining about transhumanism.
You got your pleasure planet here, so obviously we got to take the deep dive here because what else are we gonna do?
Yeah, since you didn't do anything with your pleasure planet other than go, hey, look, boobs.
And it's like, well, that was weird, and then we're all happy and we're relaxed again. Hooray!
Yep.
No consequences.
Spock's confused that they didn't just lie down and not move for 3 days.
Should I go into my awards?
Yeah, I think we should avoid another rabbit hole, for lack of a better pun.
All right, so I used a different award for this one previously, but this time it's going to be irrational Irish stereotypes. If anyone's ever collecting these, just put them all in a giant Venn diagram together.
Sony, I need to find whatever pipe things they use for that to play during that award.
The second award is sufficiently advanced aliens, for aliens that are able to generate entire people in a few moments without anyone really noticing. They're just sort of popping into existence, as well as being able to mind read and poorly derive what you want from your day-to-day life there.
Yep, and no one cares. It's hand-waved. It's like, you wouldn't be able to understand us. Just feel free to use our pleasure garden.
It's effectively magic. Don't worry about it. We got Pleasure Planet, of course, because this is sort of what it's designed to be, though it's kind of bad at it. And, of course, Dangerous Thoughts, because any stray thought can get you in trouble on this planet.
Yep, control. He orders everyone to stop thinking.
Yep.
Which is impossible.
Like, well, so all right, everyone, clear your head, clear your thoughts. If you think about, J. Edgar Hoover's going to show up and kill us all. Okay, clear your heads. Okay. I'm sorry, guys. So I guess this is maybe we should have been talking about Ghostbusters the whole time.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, at some point, maybe we should. It seems like it might be a better thing.
Well, they do have unlicensed proton accelerators on their back that are like really super compact. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, that's a science fiction thing. Sure, why not?
Yeah, they got a device that's able to contain some sort of bizarre alien, unusual supernatural energy patterns, aka ghosts in their basements. That's pretty solid sci-fi there, even though it's also occult. It's sort of a crossover zone between the genres.
Oh, the occult was the original sci-fi.
Yeah,
way back in the 18 some odds.
So it's just sort of coming back on itself there. So yeah, I think the Ghostbusters would be fitting for us at some point here. Well, I'd playlist.
All right. Well, before we get off on any more weird tangents, next week on Watches of Tomorrow, we will be watching original Star Trek series episode, The Galileo 7.
Oh, are we going to be probing Jupiter?
I don't know. Maybe we've somehow missed Galileo's 1 through 5.
All right,
6 actually. Math.
Well, we I guess maybe it's still 5, but it's Galileo's 2 through 6 as opposed to 1 through 5. So you're close. So all cool.
I have no idea. I'm staring at the Wikipedia page for this now, but I have such a bad headache I can't actually read half of it. So I have no clue what this is about. I see the word shuttlecraft and ill-fated.
Yep. I did a little bit of reading because of my outro, of course, but that seems to be all it's about.
Yes. The bad outro due to migraine.
Don't worry about it, listeners. We'll be more on top of things next week because hopefully we'll have a better episode.
Well, either it's a better episode and we'll talk about the episode, or it's another not as good episode. Then who knows where we'll wind up.
And so that's why it's important for us to send a manned mission to Pluto. Wait, where do we start here?
But you can find out next week here on Watchers of Tomorrow.
Toodles. Next time on Watchers of Tomorrow, Spock gets a shuttle crashed and the crew starts to question his leadership. You have been listening to Watchers of Tomorrow, a podcast on science fiction media. Find and follow Watchers of Tomorrow on Podbean, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, Spreader, Digital Podcast, and perhaps many more to come. If you enjoy our podcast, make sure to subscribe for more. And where possible, make sure to rate your experience or leave us a review. You may find Gepwin on youtube.com/Gepwin and Twitter @Gepwin. You may find me, Dr. Isix, on youtube.com/Dr. Isix and Twitter @IsixLP. Music is Waveform and Maury's Principle, both by DRKRN. You can also check out the Watchers of Tomorrow Discord channel. Make sure to share the experience with your friends, family, enemies, and alien overlords. If you feel you are suffering from transporter syndrome, please be aware that the next time you step off the transporter, that you, that is now, no longer exists.